Hello folks, I'm Cooper, and today on Cooking with Cleavers we're talking about Shibazizuo's carbon steel knives, specifically the BW302, which is the same knife as far as I can tell as the S210-2. So this will work for both the BW302 and the S210-2, the S210-1. The dash after it just alters the length of the blade and the height potentially, but other than that, they're all the same material as far as I can tell. So the BW302 as well as the S210 are called Songdao is the character they have there. The markings on the blade are Shibazizuo, Songdao, and 2. Potentially some of the S210s are also marked with Sanhegang, which is a small marking that you can't see here, but on the TP03 lineup and the F208 lineup, the Sanhegang marking means that it's a layered steel. This particular knife is most assuredly not a layered steel. It is a monolithic carbon steel. At least as far as I can tell, and I would be willing to bet that all of the S210s are as well. And if they do use a layering, it's all different carbon steels, so it doesn't really matter in this sense, and none of the carbon steels they use are particularly great. But anyway, so there you go on the markings. Disclaimer on this review, I'm not very positive. I don't have a good opinion of the Shibazizuo carbon steel lineup. I quite like their TP03 and F208 layered steel slicing cleaver lineup, but yeah, this carbon steel knife I got is either a lemon or they just have bad quality control. But anyway, we'll get into the details of this knife. So the BW302 as well as the S210-2 are 206 millimeters long, or about 8 1/8 inches long, by 91 millimeters or 3 7/16 inches tall. They weigh 318 grams. So there's that. It's 11.6 ounces. The steel is a unknown carbon steel. It's pretty standard for carbon steel knives to not tell you. My more preferred carbon steels like the CCK 1301 and its smaller 1302 are also non-labeled, other than that they are carbon steels. So that's pretty standard. As far as I can tell, this carbon steel is not super hard. I think the CCKs are a little bit harder in the carbon steel, not that they're a very hard hardened carbon steel either, but sharpening, it feels like this is a bit softer of a steel. So that means it will probably wear out its edge faster. Also from the factory, the edge on this is not good. Well, to be honest, my blade has a bend to it. I had to work on it to try to work out that bend and then sharpen it in a way that compensates for the bend in the blade. So that's one issue with the edge on mine. The other was, that's common as far as I can tell from other reviews on the S210s and BW302s, is the way they sharpen it is they seem to have like a 70-30 or a 90-10 grind, which is strange in slicing cleavers. Most of them are 50-50 grinds. So they sharpen mostly on the right side and don't really do anything on the left side. That bevel was basically just not there. So if you're left-handed, you'll definitely not like this out of box. If you're right-handed, you still probably won't like it out of box, and you'll probably want to get it on some whetstones to fix that edge. So it's more normal. Yeah, anyway, you may or may not be able to see it. On this one, it's due to the bend in the blade, I had to do some more grinding to try to get a straight edge. I went down to Genda Industries in Kaohsiung, and Tom there helped me on a grinder to grind that edge out so it'd be a straight edge despite a bend in the blade. Anyway, so not a fan of having a bent blade sent to me, but probably a lemon. Maybe it's the shipper's fault, the store that I got it from, whatever. I ordered it online, so I didn't get to see it before I received it, but you know, whatever. Just be aware of that. If you're ordering it on AliExpress or something, I wouldn't expect them to have great quality control, or you know, be careful. I don't expect them to be careful about how they handle things. So you may also experience problems. I did not get mine on AliExpress. I'm in Taiwan, so I got it on Shopee, which is a website here that you probably can't use in the US, but that's okay. Anyway, on to sharpenability. It's a soft carbon steel. It's easy to sharpen and it will get sharp, but its edge retention is probably not that great. You'll have to keep it on whetstones and or strop fairly frequently to keep it going. And that's fairly common for a lot of Chinese slicing cleavers. So this is not a particularly well refined slicing cleaver. Not that I expect slicing cleavers to be like super high level, especially when you're only paying like 20, 30 bucks on some of them, maybe less. But this one is particularly unsatisfactory, potentially. Maybe I'd be fine with its finish and quality, whatever, if it didn't have a bent blade. So maybe I'm just a little miffed. But some would call it like a karochi finish, but it's really just like a spray painted on finish on the top of the blade here. It serves some as a rust control, probably mostly as a stylistic thing, that it's the black finish on the top of this blade. On mine, it was very dusty, so I had to scrub on it a lot to get it to stop shedding black dust. So it's not really a finish that's like, if you look at a CCK, that finish, really it's fine. Mine did not shed at all, and it's not like a spray painted on type thing. On the Shibazizuo, it feels like it's spray painted on, or at least powder coated or whatever, something finish like that, and had to spend a good amount of time to scrub it off so that there wasn't black residue from this coming off on food or whatever. Anyway, be aware of that. Wash it off well and keep scrubbing until it's your sponge or rag or whatever stops being black. For the handle, it's came very splintery, you could say. I've oiled mine with a mineral oil, and it's just not a good wood handle. It doesn't absorb the mineral oil very well, and then it gets dried out also very quickly, and it's very splintery. If you do get it, you'll definitely want to sand it, and then make sure to keep it well oiled and or put on another finish to maintain the handle. For the thickness of the blade, people are probably going to ask, which is perfectly fine. It's an important thing. Shibazizuo knives in their Sangdao or Piandao, their slicing cleaver lineups, seem to have thicker blades. If you take a look at their choils, front or rear, at the heel or the tip, they're just thicker than other knives. So if you go and watch my review of the Shibazizuo TP03 and F208 lineup, I talked about that thickness in their blades. And that's same thing in this carbon steel lineup. If you compare it to something like the 1302 or 1301 from CCK, it's very obviously thinner for the 1301. So just as a point of reference, the thickness, I measure thickness at the heel, at the spine of the blade, at the tip, middle, and heel, and then at the midpoint of the blade, at the tip and heel, and then 10 millimeters from the edge of the blade, or 29 millimeters from the edge, 10 millimeters from the edge, and then right behind the bevel of that edge. And I do that at the tip, middle, and heel of the blades. So I've done that with many knives using my calipers. If you're looking for a carbon steel knife, I'll just compare those. So compared to a 1301, here the Shibazizuo's thickness at the spine is 1.8 to 1.9 millimeters. It's actually thickest at the tip, which is strange. For the Shibazizuo, the thickest is at the heel, right behind where the full tang goes into the handle, so most knives get thicker there, and it's 2.8 millimeters there, but it quickly thins out to 1.5 millimeters on through the middle and down to 1.9 millimeters at the tip, and that's along the spine. At the midpoint, the CCK is thinner at 2.2 millimeters and 1.5 millimeters at the heel and tip respectively, and the Shibazizuo is still at 1.8 millimeters thickness. At 29 millimeters from the edge of the blade, the CCK is also thinner at 1.5 to 1.3 millimeters along that blade, and the Shibazizuo is still at 1.7 to 1.6 millimeters. At 10 millimeters behind the edge of the blade, the CCK is 0.5 to 0.6 millimeters thick, whereas the Shibazizuo is 0.9 millimeters thick. And then just behind the bevel, the edge, is 0.3 to 0.2 millimeters thick on the CCK 1301 and 0.5 millimeters on the Shibazizuo. To be fair, for the Shibazizuo, it has the way it's been sharpened, there's a rather significant bevel due to the non-straight nature of the blade, so there you go. But it's significantly thicker than your CCKs. Oftentimes this knife is offered as like a cheaper or potentially more available option than the CCK carbon steel knives. I personally don't think that it's much of a it doesn't correspond super well with the CCK cleavers. I mean, it's a carbon steel knife, so it's the carbon steels. Yeah, the CCK 1300 lineup has carbon steel, but outside of that, not that great of a similarity. It's thicker and not as high quality. If I were you, I wouldn't bother getting this knife probably. I'd just go get the nicer, well-refined and higher quality Shibazizuo F208s or TP03s. They're a better option. Or if you really want a carbon steel knife, go check out your Chinese markets. This last week I went out and purchased this knife. It's a little bit taller than I would prefer, but has a nice flat belly profile and is a reasonable carbon steel blade that I got for less than this Shibazizuo carbon steel blade. Probably in the CCK lineup, the most relevant size comparison would be the 1303. The smallest I have is the 1302, which is slightly longer and slightly taller. I personally prefer a longer blade like the 1301. Here you can see it's like 1.5 or 2 inches longer, 34 or so millimeters longer, whatever that works out to. So CCKs are generally nicer. They're thinner, probably a little bit better of a steel. So if you're going to get a carbon steel knife, go look at something in a Chinese market and find something there, or probably pay out a little more and get a CCK knife. forgot about the belly. The belly on this knife is not the flattest of bellies. As you can see when I put the heel down, the tip is, so when there's a slight flat at the heel that's very short, and you can see that the tip is significantly off of the cutting board. There's a short flat-ish type thing up towards the tip, and when that's flat, the heel is up significantly. Compared to the CCKs, they do have, the CCKs have a nice flat up front, a bit of a flat in the middle, and a good flat in the rear, so they're not completely flat along the entire blade, but a better flat than on these BW302, this Shibazizuo. Don't really like the belly profile a whole ton. So anyway, that's my review of the Shibazizuo carbon steel lineup, specifically the BW302, which corresponds and is probably the exact same knife as the S210-2. The S210-2 is probably the American market or the forward market version, and this is the domestic market version. Maybe I'm just a little bit bitter that I got a lemon. I've seen some opinions, some reviews, some comments on various chats of people who like their S210s and haven't had problems with them, but this is not a recommend at this point in time for me, because I mean, you might get a lemon. It's not worth it to get a lemon. Go get a nicer knife like this or this. Where you can get it, if you do want to get one, the S210 is probably mostly available on AliExpress. I've never bought anything on AliExpress and don't intend to, because giving your shipping stuff and credit card information to a large Chinese corporation doesn't sound like a wise idea to me, but you do you. The shipping on it is probably, I think the shipping is usually free, but can take up to like 2 or 3 months. I've heard various things where people have ordered knives on AliExpress and just never get them. So yeah, be aware of that. Yeah. Anyway, thank you for watching this episode of Cooking with Cleavers. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like and share with friends and family. And if you want to learn more about Chinese slicing cleavers, please hit the notifications bell and subscribe. Also, if you'd like to support this channel so I can get more slicing cleavers to share with you, I have a Patreon account, and I'll put a link for that probably somewhere around on the screen here too, but down in the description box there will be a link for my Patreon.